I know that we all love doing yoga outside, partly because when it's this beautiful, you just want to do everything you can do outside. In a class I was teaching earlier this week, I tried to plant the seed with everybody that if you're making a phone call, go outside, right? Whatever you have to do to absorb these days. But in yoga in particular, one of the things that will provide the most effective yoga practice is being able to come present moment, right? And I think we all question, what is my best tool for that? Well, one of them is sensory input. So anytime you can notice the temperature of the sun on your skin, or the breeze, or the sounds of the crickets and the grasshoppers and the mourning dove that I just heard a moment ago, all of these things bring you into your body, into this moment, into this breath. So tap into whatever sense really works for you best. I mean, it might be just the feeling of being on the earth with its texture, with its dampness, or whatever you're sensing. So I'm always happy as I'm providing a general framework. When I see people doing something else, I'm like, oh, good, they're listening to their body, and that's how you'll have the best practice ever. So thank you for coming to the mat. I'm really grateful that you're all here. I'm going to invite us to start off seated, and if that just doesn't feel right to you, you can certainly be on your back body, coming into breath there. We're going to do something called a Sufi grind. The Sufi dancers were known for spiraling, so that might sound familiar. And you need to find what gives you the right height. Your block might give you a good lift. I've got a folded blanket. But we'd ideally like our hips about the same height as the knees. And again, if this is awkward, you could adjust by bringing your legs into straddle, for example. First, let's find that sense of core support that really sends our spine into its most elongated, spacious form. So as you're ready, inhaling, root through the sits bones and rise up through the back top of the skull. And just check in. Do you feel ignition in your core muscles? If so, celebrate. If not, don't worry. We'll be waking them up in other ways in our practice. So finding your inward gaze, looking up and in towards that third eye point. And first, just begin to notice the sensation of breath moving you and touching you from the inside. Notice breath rising and settling. And throughout our practice, we would love to lengthen the breath as much as possible. You might even ask of the inhale, of the exhale, is there more? So we're going to begin our Sufi grind by going counterclockwise. So if you, on your next inhale, take your chest and belly a little forward and then to your left, you'll be going counterclockwise. And you don't have to marry the breath with this movement, but if you do, then it's inhale on the front of that semicircle and the exhale on the back half. And it's wonderful to go slow and notice all the little attachment points around the hips, the ribs. Check in with your spine and see if you can mostly just have the head upright, floating atop this amazing circling that your rib cage, waist, and chest are doing. I'm going to go this direction for a few more. You might add the connection of the tip of the tongue at the roof of the mouth, the softening of the jaw, maybe even a soft smile. And you might even add your ujjayi, that soft throat contraction that creates a whooshing sound or great sounding breath. next time you are in the forward part of your circle, pause. Deep inhale, exhaling reverse direction. Do you notice anything different? This is a beautiful time to observe if there are sticky spots, stiff spots. We'll hope to love them up with our yoga practice, which I often say is like giving yourself a massage. We'd love to seek out intensity, but it should always be something we can receive, where you're like, oh yeah, that's the spot. And as we do a few more this direction, see how slow you can go. And the next time you in the forward part of your circle, just inhale and then exhale into kind of a cat back, drawing back. My hope is you can feel a marvelous stretch as your shoulder blades wing away from each other, like you're sliding them down the arms. And on your inhale, if you pause until there's absolutely no more inhale available, my hope is you'll get a wonderful stretch up into the clavicle. Sometimes when I don't feel like doing much of a very active yoga practice in the morning, I'll just go into this kind of spinal movement. Or if my wrists aren't enjoying cow-cat in table, I'll do this seated version instead. And then as you are ready, we'll just come to an upright. We're going to add a side body stretch. So placing your fingers on the mat on one arm and just raising the other arm up. You might roll the wrist, make it delicious. How much of your hand's done today? And then as you're ready, if you rotate your chest a little towards the earth, my hope is you're feeling a side stretch down into those intercostals, and all the muscular connections kind of down around the armpit are actually a really big part of our shoulder health. And as you're ready, just release and come upright. Other side. And especially if you are outdoors, enjoying that gift of looking up, noticing what's there. Always letting breath undulate, massage you from the inside. And at some point, you might rotate the chest towards the earth a little. Is there more? And releasing to upright once more. Nice. I'm going to remove my object of support from behind me and under me, and then come forward onto hands and knees and table. So again, one of the great joys of practicing outside is the ground can be very interesting. So notice if there's a kind of wonderful mound that you might be able to kind of get your palm to curve around. On the inhale, cow-cat. And in a moment, I'm going to invite you to take it to downward facing dog. Before you go there, just noticing a few details. First, we want our intelligent hand position, those fingers spread wide, and that when we raise up to downward dog, we'd like to press down through the index finger and pad of the thumb. You might also take the hands wider than the shoulders. And I'm going to take my feet really wide to start with too. As you're ready, exhaling cat back, your version of downward dog. And making any little adjustments, wiggling those hips left and right. breathing. You might look between the legs and see what's off in the far horizon. You might give your head a little yes, a little no shake. And we're going to bring our right knee forward into our pigeon pose for our hip stretch. Now, some people's knees won't appreciate that, in which case you'll just come onto your back body, bend the knees, take the right ankle onto left thigh, hug the whole deal, really hugging the right knee tightly to your chest, and then rotating a little left. Either way, we're seeking that sensation into the right glute, the piriformis, which is kind of higher up in the glute space. And some of us might feel it in the IT band, hamstrings. It's all good. If it's not bothering a joint, marvelous. Make it organic. Maybe there's a little wiggle left and right that makes it perfect. If you're facing your mat, you can always use your back foot to draw a little deeper in pigeon, ideally supporting your forehead. Where do you feel breath in this shape? Let's add 3 sighing breaths. Long inhale through the nose. And in your own time, you'll find the other side. If you're in classic pigeon, you might come up first for a little kind of waking pigeon, as I think of it, heart opening towards the front of the mat. And then finding your way out. Sometimes I go to table and I just give that bent leg a kind of break. I'll circle the knee and so on before coming into the other side. We always enter and exit each pose slowly. We're curious what's there today. It always makes me happy when I look around and I see all different versions of the pose. I'm like, those are yogis listening to their body. Again, is there any little movement left to right, or again, drawing back with that back leg that will bring you to that edge? Again, that intensity where there's room for evolution, where we breathe into it and there's the possibility of something releasing. Really pressing breath down into the pelvis. And on these last 3 breaths, if you'd like, adding lion stretch on the exhale. So it's that same inhale through the nose. And then on the exhale, vigorous opening your mouth. Really stretching the jaw. You might even feel nice contraction around the base of the skull. Maybe you stick out the tongue. Last one. And again, taking time in your release, find the best version of the pose. And again, I'm going to kick my left leg out and rotate it. And then I'm going to come into something I think of as a knee down, upward facing dog. So if you're currently in table and you take your hands about 1 hand length forward, that's usually about right. So then as I slide my shoulders forward and let my hips hang, my shoulders are right above the palms. If you're feeling it a lot in your wrist, your hands might be too far forward. See if you can anchor the shoulders, Deep inhale, draw the heart forward, shoulder blades down. Exhaling, press back child's pose. Now if this is awkward for your knees, just go as far as you can go. You could also do something against the wall where you would just be kind of opening your chest towards the wall, arms above. And we'll do one more. Long inhale. And returning to your table pose. So I want you to notice if you're in your core already. And one way to kind of check that is, can you clap? And that's a great sign that you are core supported. So I'm going to ask you to just lift your right hand and left knee. And just see if you can feel that diagonal effort. And then slowly extending. Good, nice long inhale here. Bring those limbs out just a little to the side. And exhale, come back as slowly as you can. And we'll do the other side, lifting left hand, right knee, checking for that core support before extending and out to the side. And if you can't be on knees at all, another nice version which brings in an even more fun balance aspect to this is just working, releasing one hand and one foot. Again, you're not doing big angles. No one wants to give up your low back, so you don't want to be in an arch in either of these poses. Really practice pressing through the heel. That will ignite the back line of the leg, the posterior chain, in a wonderful way. You know, most of us are really tight in the hamstrings and butt, but we're also pretty weak, the majority of us. So just this action of flexing is super effective for the glute and the thigh. Good. Let's make sure we'll do one more each side. If you remember what side you started with, great. I started with my right hand. Lovely. And we're going to come on to our back four bridge pose. Plant those feet directly under your knees. I like anchoring my upper arm. I find that I get less neck tension in my effort to kind of create a shoulder blade sandwich. Some people will just do arms straight on the ground. Totally up to you. But either place your block between your thighs or perhaps imagine that you have one there. And as you're ready, rise up. And we're never trying to hold a pose in a stagnant way. So you might feel like, ooh, I want to kind of come down a little bit from that very upper end of the hold. Maybe you want to come all the way back to the earth and then rise up again. The slower your descent, the better here. And can you bring breath into the chest, reaching the chest up and back, sending the knees towards me. One more long inhale, rooting, reaching, and again, slow, slow descent, and then bringing knees to belly. So we often do a little spinal rocking side to side, and again, if you're actually on ground, it gets very interesting. You get some extra little acupressure points there. We're going to return to bridge for our foot hover leg extension work. So you want your feet no more than like 4 to 6 inches apart. Again, imagining the block, and then very slowly raising one foot off of the ground. And we're going to go back and forth like this. I encourage you to pause long enough in each side to notice, is my hip dropping, and what does it take to get it to come back up? If you're feeling pretty good, you'd like a little more work, then extend the leg, flexing through the heel, keeping the thighs the same height. Breathing, trying not to use your neck, which I find very challenging. It's kind of a focus every time for me. And And when you do feel complete, again, knees to belly. And then I'm going to invite us to move into a straddle here. So I like bringing my hands kind of at the knee or even above to give me plenty of support and room to truly get those legs straight. So see if you can flex through the heel and totally activate the thigh muscles to get the legs straight. You could also use a strap. Good. And then as you're ready, we're going to add a sit-up motion. And if you're like, no, I'm not, then just bring those feet flat like for bridge, but wide. All right? Otherwise, we'll all take our hands behind the head. Long inhale. Exhale, power down through your low back until you feel the pelvis tilt upwards. And then add your sit-up. If this just bothers your neck, leave this out and just work with engaging down through the core. Inhaling, releasing. We'll do 2 more. It's kind of fun again to check out the view. What is on this direction where you are? Is there more? Really emptying, emptying. If you can still whisper, you've got exhale in there. Powering down. And releasing. Assisting the legs in if you'd like. We're going to plant our feet on the ground, but soles facing each other in a butterfly pose. So I've got my knees just relaxing to the outside. Enjoying breath there. You might bring your arms out into kind of a relaxed jet airplane, palms to the sky. And if this is just feeling perfect, you don't have to change a thing. But if you'd like to join me in some glute work, go ahead and lift the hips up off of the ground. And you don't have to go, as high as you can. All you have to do is come a little off of the earth and you're going to be getting, again, some really great glute activity. And many of us feel tight in that area of the body, but don't necessarily do a lot daily to strengthen it. I'm going to be here for about a minute. If that's too much, just come out. You can always come back in. Inviting deep belly breath. This is a great chance to observe the breath length. You might even count it and see if you can extend it from where it was. So if you normally are getting a 3 count inhale, see if you can get a 4 or 5 count. Do one more long inhale, and then a slow, slow release. And then just straighten your legs out, although you might take them kind of wide, so we're not just in that regular path that our body often takes, giving your body a different place in the world. We're going to come into abdominal pumping. And you can do this with knees bent if you're uncomfortable as you are. But I like having my hands on my belly as a way to kind of be aware of what's happening. As you're ready, gather a long inhale. Exhale, empty the breath and hold out. Do not breathe. With the breath held out, draw the belly in like you're saying, see how skinny I am? And then push out, big Buddha belly. And when you need to breathe, do. Sighing breath can feel marvelous. Inviting a couple more rounds, and depending on how that felt, you might want to go slower, more intensively or firmly. Sometimes after I've emptied my breath and I'm holding out, I'll draw the belly in and then I'll kind of try and draw in again a little more, almost like I'm trying to bring my stomach up into my chest space. You might even get a stretch up into your clavicle or throat. Sometimes it makes us cough. You might be able to feel the movement of your organs against the spine, right? Because this is all one thing. We're not really divided into front and back, and belly pump is a great reminder of that. When that is complete, go ahead and join me in all the time you want to take to come up to standing. So you might just roll to one side and kind of press up. Some of you might spinal rock to downward dog, however you want to get there. And once you're up, I'm going to invite you to just start rolling your ankles out. Again, I like to sometimes think about what these parts of my body have been doing today. Let's do the wrists while we're at it. Hopefully yours have been doing a lot uncomplainingly, but now we can notice like, oh yeah, that's kind of stiff or tight. And I'm going to have you curl your foot under. If this hurts, obviously don't do it, but usually on a soft surface like this, it's great. If you're, ever at home and you're on like a wood floor, you want to add some padding. And let's go the other way. Flexibility in our feet is such a huge, huge part of, I think, aging well, being able to move through the world. That's how we get our proprioception, is through our foot movements. So let's go again. I'm going to come onto the ball of my foot on that right side and send the kind of ankle forward, and that should create a nice stretch for the toes and into the arch. And when you're ready, release and switch. So of course we have histories. Some of us have toes that have been broken and other things. This is a chance to become aware and of course be loving, but also to kind of get in there. Again, find that edge that's safe, that you can breathe into. Nice. We're going to take it sideways on our mat, which can be interesting if you're on a little bit of a slant, so feel free to adjust. But how wide can you comfortably take your feet? And we're just going to pause here a moment, anchoring big toe and ball. See if you can spread the other toes. And then as you push the earth away, I'm hoping you'll feel some great ignition in the front of the thighs. And if you're not sure, you can put your hands on the thigh muscles and see if you can make them jump under your touch. It's like you're trying to pull your kneecap up. Good. Now we're going to rotate our right foot 90 degrees. And I'm going to use the power of my back leg to slowly settle the hips forward in our Warrior Two lunge. We're going to spend a few moments here just pulsing. Yeah, you guys look great. You've got the knee over the ankle, which is what we want. If your knee wants to come forward of the ankle, you got to scoochy scooch to align them. So what's there? What's in the inner thigh? What's in that back leg? When you're ready, settle at your edge. Add the arms reaching out from the heart and join me in 3 breaths. Maybe you want to add platter hands, that rotation. Noticing sensations, smell, sounds, the sound of your own breath. One more. And returning to your straddle. I hope you got to hear from your thighs a little bit. Let's see what's on the other side. Rotating left foot 90. Power from that back leg sends our hips forward. So one of the things that we're trying to create in our Warrior Two lunge is what we call an external thigh rotation. And so if you look at that front foot and your knee is inside of the foot at all, then you need to think about externally rotating. And in this case, if you engage your left butt cheek towards the right edge of the mat, that might help. It's important for our knee health. It's also part of what creates stability so that you feel very strong and rooted here. Again, you might add platter hands. One more breath, rising and settling. And returning to straddle. All right, I'm going to walk my feet in a little bit, bend my knees, and fold. Go ahead and do a little wiggle here and there, just a little side to side. And then I'm going to start taking it side to side. And if you notice that you can deepen your stance and take the feet wider again, go for it. Again, you don't have to marry movement with breath, but taking enough time on each side to really explore the edge. Some people enjoy a nice little addition here of kind of settling your butt towards one heel and then taking the other foot toes to the sky. It's just another stretch. When I do that, sometimes I'll intentionally fold my torso a little towards the mat. Again, we don't really care how this looks or how far we get. We are so interested in massaging our body in a delicious way. We hopefully can hear our muscles say, "Oh my God, thank you." When you feel complete with both sides, we'll come to center and see if it would feel good to try and straighten the legs. For me, it often does if I add a little support. So I'm going to take my block to give me just a little less intensity in my hamstrings as I make this fold. If having the legs straight just doesn't feel good, then hang out with legs bent. Whichever version you're doing, we're going to add a spinal twist here. And again, if just being this low is awkward, try bringing elbows to thighs instead. That's also a nice alternative. Whether you've got your hand on the ground or a block, let's inhale and sweep open through the right. Exhale, slowly return to your fold. Inhaling, extend your spine and open to the left. And exhaling, return and fold. I'm going to do this a couple more times. How slow and long can you make the breath? Is there more? And the next time you're opening to the right, if you want to pause and add a partial bind where you're rotating the palm, settling the back of the hand on the lower spine. Just offers another kind of massage for the shoulder. And as you try that perhaps with the left, is this side different? What can you know? I'm going to walk my feet in a little closer, bend the knees more deeply for Yoga Mudra. Now keep in mind that we can also just do this standing. And if you have a difficult time getting the arms to straighten, adding a strap, a scarf, a sock can work really well. Because what we want is to give it enough room to get the shoulder blades to kind of rotate back and in towards each other. That's where we get the delicious massage here, as we then choose to pump the hands away from the body and return. Oh, and sometimes for me there's some wonderful kind of inspiration to move the head and neck, maybe get some free chiropractic adjustments. Again, I love seeing so many different versions. If you've got a great stretch, you might pause there and hold as you breathe into it, Notice where the stretch arrives, perhaps deeper in the intercostals around the ribs. And releasing. Come on up. Nice little comfortable kind of squat. We're going to bring the hands together in front and round. So again, it's like a cat back. Oh yeah. And as you're holding there, go ahead and kind of tilt to one side. So I'm kind of raising my right shoulder, tilting my left down, and reversing. Marvelous. And let's love up those wrists. So we're going to do standing jet airplane, front of the mat, or if you want to go to the back of the mat and look at something completely other than me, feel free. But we want to start with our feet straight forward and really check into them, that you want them again maybe at most 2 fist widths apart. So if you have a tendency to kind of, your mountain is wide, see if you can bring it in a little bit. And then I want you to just notice, if you don't think about anything else except rooting and reaching up through the upper back of the skull, notice what happens in your body. And my hope is you feel all this intelligence and ignition happen, especially through the core, glutes, thighs. Let's add rotating the shoulder heads down and back and the palms forward. We're going to just stay here for 3 breaths, always letting the breath adjust the body so we're not frozen. Nice soft drishti gaze, meaning a soft eye focus, perhaps on the ground or the horizon. Notice if the mind wanders, bring it back, watching one more full breath. And before we move on, I want you to just scan your body a moment. We have a tendency in yoga when we're trying to be tall or we're trying to be open or breathe deeply to tilt the rib cage up. And this actually doesn't serve us. It takes us out of our core and usually into back pressure. This doesn't serve us either, tilting it down, which we spend a lot of the day that way. So I want you to just check that you feel really neutral through the rib cage. And then as you're ready, inhale and slowly sweep the arms up. Holding here. Now, ideally, I'd love to find a version with the arms straight, but they don't have to be straight up. And for me, that often creates a lot of neck-shoulder tension. So I want us to find the place of good effort where you can welcome probably the effort happening in the upper back. Shoulder heads are down, neck is peaceful. And as we hold for a couple more breaths, think about, again, anchoring through the big toe and the ball, that whole inner line of the foot. And my hope is that that will create even more ignition in the thighs. And this is going to come in handy in our next pose, which is a balancing pose. So enjoy a long inhale. Exhaling, prayer hands. Thumbs lightly connecting at the heart, bringing your right foot into kickstand for tree pose. Perhaps you want to bring it up to the calf, fine, never at the knee. And you might notice I've got my toes flared, what we call yoga toes. And that's because I want to be awake from my fingertips to my toes to my head. And this will help with balance as well. If you fall out, my hope is you can kind of lightly touch and come back. If you're not wiggling at all, make it harder, please. Go ahead and close your eyes or add your tree limbs. Perhaps become a tree in a great wind. I'm hoping you're noticing a lot of wonderful work through our waistline. We'll be adding that in another pose soon. So get really awake to the strength and hopefully flexibility through your side body. And especially if you're wiggling, find slow, steady breath anyway. Right? This is the great challenge in feeling unstable, not knowing what's going to happen next. Let us breathe into it. Slow, deep, and wide. And when you are ready to come out, prayer hands. Whew, I like to give that standing leg a shake. You might roll the ankle out. And let's come into the other side. So again, finding that anchoring. So any of you who are wobbling in the pose, in that moment, think about squeezing the inner thighs towards each other and powering down through that inner line of the foot. It really changes things. And you'll notice you might have been in like a little bit of a hip cock, and that gets rid of it. Boom, you're making your tree trunk nice and strong. So finding your edge here, again, challenging your balance a bit as needed. And then notice not only the breath, getting it steady, but also if you tend to do other things when you're losing your balance. Do you clench your jaw or sandwich the tongue against the roof of the mouth? Do you tighten the neck? We want all the effort to be right here in that center and lower body. Again, nice squeeze and engagement of those inner legs, rooting through that inner foot. And in your own time, release out. Let's give that one a kick out. So we're going to take some of those same principles here, and we're going to be coming from the front of our mat, stepping back into crescent lunge, which many of us are familiar with. I'm going to invite you to add a balancing pose on the way back. So we'll do our, standing crane, and then I'm going to ask you to explore staying straight in the body, going as close towards parallel with the earth as you can. And if you're doing that, again, think about lengthening through the top of the head, and then you'll set down with as much control as you can. It's kind of funny to notice how scared we can get when we're wobbling, and then you're like, the ground's right here, I'm really okay. So starting in your mountain stance, nice engagement through the inner line of the foot. Slowly lift that left knee. If you're losing your balance, talk to the standing leg. Slow journey back. Pause for a full breath. Elongate the back of the neck. And slowly set down. Steer the right hip bone back, left hip bone forward. This is really huge. And I'm hoping you can feel kind of that scissoring of the thighs. It makes you super stable. We're going to add our goalposts, as I think of them. And I'm going to invite you to just very slowly go a little left and right. Very slow, little movements, because I want you to feel it in the waist, but I don't want anything to pull. I don't want your neck to be tight. Good. Centering, take a nice long inhale. Maybe you want to add a little back bend, meaning the heart and ribs actually go forward and then up. Exhaling, Virabhadrasana 2, Warrior 2, planting that back foot. As you send the hips forward, check that external thigh rotation and also stacking the shoulders. So I'm going to check that my left shoulder is coming back and then opening through the heart. If you ever feel neck tension when you're trying to look forward, please be reminded you don't have to get your head all the way forward. You can even play with looking behind you. Notice your heartbeat. Notice the sounds outside of you. One more breath, settling, sinking, and then inhaling, straighten that front leg, reach up. We're going to pause here, and I want us to first think about getting really long, like you want to pick an apple above you, or maybe a plum or a peach. And then ever so slowly, just imagine you're kind of painting back along the sky a little bit with your hand, just a few inches. Breathing there. So you should feel, again, good waistline work, but no collapse through the backside. And on a slow exhale, send the hips forward again, bringing our right elbow to right thigh for our lateral stretch. So here too, we want the thigh bone straight. So if your butt went out behind, come back up. By the way, if your stance is kind of short, it really makes this harder. So if you've got the capacity to scooch it a little or a lot, go for it. Good. Stack that top shoulder, because this is where we get the gifts of these shapes. Reaching out beyond the head. You guys look awesome. Breathe deeply into what you've found. Maybe you want to circle that top arm. Maybe you're doing a partial bind. I'm going to invite you to take it on an exhale to your downward facing dog, planting the hands and stepping back. Now, if that doesn't appeal to you for a variety of reasons, instead, please come up, come onto the ball of the back foot again, and meet me at the front of the mat for standing hip pump. This is always a nice alternative. Inhaling, kind of squatting back, exhaling, squeezing forward. If you're in downward dog and you're like, oh yeah, I'm so ready for dog series, join me. Inhaling plank. If it's your first plank of the day, definitely come down to knees. Exhaling, work those elbows in towards your ribs and maybe bend just an inch and hold. You should feel really good tricep action. You might sink all the way to the ground for our cobra, or maybe you're coming into upward dog on the tops of the feet or the balls of the feet. And exhaling, downward facing dog. Inhaling, exhaling, sigh. And notice what's between your feet. And you might walk the hands back to the feet. You might jump forward. But either way, find your own way to the front of the mat for our warrior flow on the other side. So what I often notice in warrior flow is that even though we're moving so slowly, that we're building a lot of internal heat and heart rate, and that's a great proof that you are in fact working all these big muscles the way we want to. So we want it to feel easeful and fun but engaged. Let's find the other side. Standing crane, right knee lifts. Yoga toes, so we really know where the ball of that foot is or the heel as I choose to press back in this balancing pose. Elongating through the back of the neck and landing. Steer the left hip bone back, right hip bone forward. And you can play here. You know, you don't have to stay with that back leg completely straight. Sometimes it might feel good to bend and then straighten. And find your version of this pose. If you liked that side to side exercise, do that again. I know some people really enjoy kind of slow slicing. Well, the smell today of not only the grass, but the creeping Charlie and all the other plants that have been mown are just almost intoxicating, aren't they? It's like, I feel like the light should be green. And perhaps a long inhale with a bit of a back bend, maybe gazing up. If you do that, remember you're lifting your chin. You're not dropping your head back. Exhaling, warrior two. Make any adjustments to find stability and strength. External thigh rotation. Stacking those shoulders, right shoulder draws back. And add your hands. Reaching from the heart. Feeling breath, lifting and settling. How low can you go? Send those hips forward. Ha, good. Straighten that front leg. Reach up. And again, your goal is primarily to be long, and then if you want to reach back just a little along the sky, feel free. Check with your neck, make sure you're creating as much ease as you can there. On an exhale, slow journey to our lateral stretch. Again, check that your knee is not moving inside of the hip. If it is, find that adjustment. Usually in this case it would be then the left glute tightening towards the front of the, or to the right side of the mat. And reaching out through the arm. If you go out beyond the head towards the horizon line, sometimes we can manifest a stretch way down in the hip bone. And if you kind of pulse your arm a little bit back and then kind of return to the ear alignment, you can also get some good shoulder opening. And maybe you want to spiral it out here. Again, if you want to move to standing hip pump instead of downward dog, please come slowly up. It's a nice balance move to come onto the ball of your back foot again to then return to standing. But that's actually the safest way to do it for your low back. If you're in downward facing dog and you're thinking dog series sounds great, notice how it felt last time. Make any adjustments. So inhaling plank, before you even think about chaturanga, raise your hips a little bit and think about proceeding with your head and chest. It's as if I want to kiss the earth before anything else touches. No wings, no shrugs. Shoulders are down, elbows are in. Exhaling, downward facing dog. Inhaling, exhaling, sigh. Marvelous. And we're going to all meet in table pose for one last balancing pose, gate pose. So a nice alternative to this, again, if being on wrists or knees is bothersome, is doing triangle pose. So I'll just show you triangle pose. This is a really fun one to do at home, by the way, with a wall behind you, because one, you get supported, but also you have the wall as a reference point, because most of us end up a little bit forward. And this is going to happen in gate pose to a lot of us, that our head or even our shoulders will be forward when we want to be flat. And being against a wall kind of tells you that. So triangle pose is the same thing as gate pose in that sense that we're completely flat between two planes if we can do it. And in this case, I've got that both legs straight. The front leg is straight, unlike Warrior 2. So it's very similar to Warrior 2 with all those principles. And then a lot of people will find this probably too deep of a stretch if you immediately add that upper arm. So I just slowly take the lower arm towards the earth, and sometimes that's all I do. Many people will add that upper arm, but for me, I can just feel like my waistline kind of tighten up. So one thing I like about gate pose is we still get a lot of waistline work, but without some of that pull. So it's kind of depending on what's going on in your body. So for gate, you start in table, and go ahead with me. Find kind of your cat back a little bit so you really feel that core again. Maybe you can clap and so on. And then you're just going to take your left foot back and place it completely sole of the foot flat. And ideally, you look underneath you and your right hand, right knee, right toes are all pointing at your left heel. So again, you're about to become very flat. When you're ready, squeeze your right butt cheek towards the left edge of the mat and see if you can bring your left hand to your left hip. Boy, is this harder on a bumpy surface, am I right? So then I have to check in because where's my head? Well, it's forward in my spine. So I'm going to bring it back because, again, it's not really that far to fall. I also want us to check in with our ribs, which both in gate pose and triangle, there's often a tendency to jut them forward. See if you can draw them back in. Draw those ribs back in till you feel that core light up. Good. And in whichever version of the pose you're in, if you want another balance challenge, go ahead and look at the sky. Good. And if you're wobbling, I hope it's amusing. When you're ready, come on out. Always roll out wrists. That can really help in between. In the long run, yoga is so good for strengthening our wrists, but we have to love them up along the way. All right, as you're ready, we'll take the other foot back. So my right foot this time. I'm going to squeeze the left butt cheek towards the right edge of the mat and bring my right hand to my right hip. I'm going to check that rib cage, make sure it's drawn back and in, shoulders stacked, head drawn back, and just see if you can release your floor hand. If you can, it's a good sign that you're really engaging that lower waistline. If you're not, you might be kind of collapsed or just not lighting those muscles up. And as you are ready, slowly, slowly release. And again, roll out those wrists. So I want to offer coming back into that one more time for kind of almost like a sidearm plank pose, but that can be pretty wrist intensive. So for anybody who wants to, you could instead just hang out in forearm plank, which is never a waste of time, and you'll get plenty of core work. What I'm going to be offering is going to give us a little more of that side body. So if you want to join me in that, feel free. So as you're ready, starting once again from your table pose, make sure those shoulder heads are really anchoring. The muscles in our side core, particularly like the lats, cannot contract if the shoulders are shrugged at all. And so a way to even play with this, if you just like want to do standing core work right now, is to work that shoulder head anchoring and rotation in jet airplane, and you can feel this work. Same thing we're going to be doing. So place that left foot back in your gate pose. Engage the right glute, stack the body, make sure that right shoulder is anchored. Then see if you can lift the right knee and maybe even extend the leg out in front of you, foot flexed. If you do that, try not to bend the body, right? I'm trying to stay pretty flat. And when you're ready, come on back. And other side. Right foot goes back. Left glute engages. Shoulders stack. Maybe I lift my left knee. If I can't, there's a good chance that I'm collapsed through the waist. Check it out. See if you can extend the leg forward. Maybe even look up. If you're quivering, you're doing it right. And release. Oof, da. Very nice. I'm going to bring us into a counter stretch. It's not quite Shavasana yet. Of course, you can go there anytime you'd like. But with this stretch, for some people the block is too much. We're going to be putting an object under our ribs, kind of just down under the shoulder blades, or south of them. And I find the block feels really good, but then it's a little too far to the ground for my head without kind of compressing the back of my spine. And I really want you to watch for that in your own body. You could just, if you've got a sweatshirt jacket, a towel, you could roll up. If you have a thicker mat, you could roll that up a little bit, and you could create either that same support under the ribs, or you can use it for the support for the head. So I just come to seated with that block behind me, and then I can kind of manipulate it, get it in that right alignment, and recline. So your job is to find something that you can receive, where you're not feeling a lot of pull in the low back or on the neck. So make any little adjustments that you need to for it to be an experience. And you might just enjoy breathing here, and taking in the sensations and the sounds. Seeing if you can breathe and stretch into the diaphragm. You might enjoy adding an active stretch for the shoulders. So if you want to do that, reach one arm straight to the sky, and then ever so slowly reach back behind you. There's no goal to reach the ground. We actually want to keep our arms straight. And then you might pulse the arm towards the ear and away. And my hope is that you're able to feel kind of a massage experience around the blade as it's moving. Yeah, breathing while you're there. do feel complete with this stretch, try not to come directly up as it can kind of strain the front of the neck. It's better if you can roll a little to one side. And then as you return to your back without an object underneath you, just notice how that feels. My hope is you feel you can connect even more deeply with the earth, with your breath. Notice again all the sounds around you that you're adding your breath to the chorus. And what would it feel like to roll your head side to side? You might just do little movements, and then you might explore as much range of motion as you can, and notice what's there. Where do you feel the stretch? Or do you feel, in fact, well lubricated and not feeling anything sticky or painful? I'm going to invite you to explore the spine a little bit more by intentionally reaching your chin up and back. I'm asking you to hold there in a very kind of deep reach. Breathe and notice where it stretches you. And then as you're ready, bring the chin towards the throat. You're keeping your head on the mat. And it's as if you're trying to press behind you through the crown of the head. Good. Go ahead and do each of those again, perhaps holding for a full breath if that feels good. And finding a neutral that just feels easeful and good. Sometimes it helps to kind of work the shoulder blades a little in towards each other so you've got kind of a nice space for the cervical spine. And we're going to come into our compression and expansion. I often start practice that way, and we're going to kind of close our practice with this deep core invigoration that also gives us a much deeper exchange of breath. If you feel like you want to add a layer at this point for comfort, but also it tends to make us a little more meditative when our chest is covered, feel free. When we're doing compression and expansion, we definitely want to ask, is there more? To stay present with those little whispers of breath, as I call them. I also find it can be very helpful to have the hands on the abdomen. And if you have a part of your body that you know is particularly weak, so for me and many people, it has been that lower belly that supports the low vertebrae that are hard to kind of communicate with. When we're doing our exhale compression, just take your fingers and kind of poke and say, hey, you, I'm talking to you, get involved. So as you're ready, just take a regular long inhale. On your exhale, begin drawing the abdomen towards the spine, pressing the back into the earth. And it's almost like you have an air mattress underneath you that you want to empty by squishing. Emptying, emptying, emptying. Breathing only through the nose if you can. Is there more? When you need to inhale, relax. Allow yourself to be breathed. And when you're witnessing the breath is almost full, see if you can sip in a little extra, expand it. Again, exhaling compression. And inhaling expansion. So as you're doing this breath and movement, you should be feeling the spine coming in and out of its curve. When we're in exhale compression, we're flattening out that curve against the earth. And when we allow the inhale and relax, we should feel the spinal curve return. And one of the things I really appreciate about this practice is that for those of us who tend to take on a lot of neck and shoulder tension, we maybe do everything with our trap muscles, and this is a great place to practice letting that go. So if you can, feel the dichotomy in that very engaged, powerful center body, and maybe roll the head side to side to check that you're not tightening the neck, the jaw, etc. If you can still whisper, it means there is some exhale inside. Is there more? Is there more? Another part of the body we can place our hands on during the exhale is the rib cage. If you're able to do that with your wrists, it's not uncomfortable, you can have your hands on the sides of the ribs, encouraging the ribs in and down as you compress out. And then on the inhale, see if you can get the ribs to flare out into your hands like gills of a fish. Notice if your mind wanders, return to breath focus. Again, the sensations that you're creating in the body. We'll just do a few more rounds, but if you can really compress throughout, like every little whisper of exhale, my hope is you'll actually feel some pretty sore core muscles in the next few days. The next time you are inhaling, just allow the body to receive the breath and relax. Notice how that felt. Notice if your body's craving any little counter shapes. It might be bringing knees into belly. You might be interested in adding one of our favorite restorative practices with the block under the sacral triangle, right at the kind of top of the crack of the butt. And if you're doing that, you want to always lay down first, have your block handy, then lift the hips and place the block underneath. Again, I like to move my shoulder heads a little underneath me so my spine isn't being pressed down into the earth. And just notice if it would feel good to straighten the legs. If you do that and your pelvis kind of tilts downward, you need to move the block further down the body until it feels like you're just perfectly suspended, kind of draped over the block. And this is meant to feel very therapeutic, very good. If you feel any kind of pinching nerve or discomfort, bend the knees again or come off completely. Practice expanding your breath into that low abdomen. See if you can get a stretch into the deep psoas muscles here between the hip bones. Stay here only as long as it feels wonderful. And then as you're ready, coming off And coming into any shape you'd like for your resting portion of the practice. We sometimes refer to as shavasana, which is actually corpse pose. We also talk about a yogic sleep, where we become deeply relaxed, almost as if we were asleep, but still mentally cognizant. And for those of us outdoors, it can be marvelous to let our attention be in the body, inviting it to sink, but then letting all of the sounds and the experiences of the air and so on also register with us on our body. So as you find your resting shape, notice if there's any part of the body that seems to be holding on, and invite it to soften more deeply, sinking with gravity down and down and down. invite you to become lightly aware of my voice, inviting you to scan your body from one end to the other, taking a little inventory, asking what's there, what do I need to know? Is there a part of the body that needs a particular kind of attention or support? Overall, do you get any messages about how much rest you need, or activity, or food? And as you scan the body, ultimately please bring it to a close with a message of gratitude, appreciating this incredible resilient body that you're in, all the ways that it is healing and recalibrating on your behalf right now. If you sense that staying as you are for a little while longer would be the perfect thing, please do. Otherwise, I want to close the practice by sharing these words. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om peace, peace, peace. Namaste.